How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Excited to get into your session.
Great.
Today we're going to be hearing all about what you've learned while spending over 150 million post iOS 14. So I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Perfect. You have your presentation up and ready?
Yeah, let me go ahead and share that screen.
Awesome. Once you get that in, I'll let you take it away and it'll be just you on the stage.
Great. I think that came through.
Yes. And if anyone has questions for Tanner during his presentation, feel free to put them in the chat. We're all excited to hear everything that you learned. So take it
Yeah.
away.
Thanks, Autumn. Awesome. Well, yeah, glad to be here. As she mentioned, my name's Tanner Duncan. I've been working in marketing and advertising since 2013. I started out as a bit of a jack of all trades, working in different areas of digital marketing, including content marketing, organic social, branding, and email automation. I fell in love with media buying after starting an agency job in about 2018, and I've been hands on keys ever since. Fast forward to present day, I'm a partner at Herman Digital, and I act as a consultant at Proxima, which is an AI powered audience platform. I also run a small boutique agency called Like We Are Friends, where I help e commerce brands with their retention strategies. Very thankful for this opportunity to speak with you all today about my experience and more specifically what I've learned managing over $150 million post iOS 14. So, the presentation I have today is 4 practical lessons that I have learned over this period of time. They're meant to be simple and accessible to businesses of all sizes. Whether you're a brand operator or media buyer, you should be able to action these and or shape them into your own ideas. And I also believe that it's very important to admit that I don't know everything, and there are many different ways to approach this line of work. All I have is my experience, and these are the lessons that I've learned. First lesson is to create a repeatable process in your ad account. The second lesson is that vertical scaling is often better than horizontal scaling. The third lesson is challenge your biases. And the fourth lesson is that patience is an optimization. First, I'd like to talk about creating a repeatable process in your ad account. It's essential to recognize that there are limits to performance improvements that can be achieved within an ad account. And this is increasingly true in the wake of evolving privacy policies and regulations. Therefore, I believe that as a media buyer or brand operator, one of your primary objectives should be to reclaim your time and to be able to focus on areas that drive material performance outcomes. That is your creative, your offer, your product, your website, amongst a few other things. The quickest way to do this is to create a repeatable process within your ad account so that you can go into the ad account without having to guess how you're going to optimize, how you're going to build, and just have a framework that you can work within. Now, this is the framework that I built out a couple of years ago just to give me an overview of how I work within accounts. It varies from account to account depending on performance and spend level, but the gist is to build a controllable environment that just doesn't leave you guessing when you're accessing that account. Now, there are 3 main components of this structure. There's your creative placeholder, your testing campaign, and your business as usual campaigns. Now, your creative placeholder is an always off campaign where all new ads are built out. It keeps creative assets nice and organized, and at any moment you can easily reference the original version of a piece of creative for easy editing. You could duplicate out, make revisions, and be able to easily extract post IDs. I utilize the ad sets for the folders of each month, and once I publish the creative, I'll append the post ID to that original creative so that I could then duplicate that out into my active campaigns, whether it be testing or scaling. The second campaign is the testing environment. I typically leverage ABO for my testing environment. I like to isolate all of my tests to individual ad sets and leverage those as containers. So I'll separate ad sets by creative concepts, by landing pages, by copy, by offer, amongst other things. And every test gets its own ad set so that I can keep the data clean and maximize learnings. Now, I do realize that that is not possible for all accounts, and I will adjust this testing process according to the scale of an account. But I do like to make sure that I'm allocating enough budget to get adequate learnings per test so that I can be able to go back to the team and then build upon those learnings. The last structure of this process is the business as usual campaigns. These are otherwise known as scaling campaigns. My business as usual campaigns are where all proven tests are scaled up. Typically, this is a combination of Advantage Plus, broad interests, and lookalikes. Now, this is the portion of this structure that will vary the most based off of scale. I do have a lot of accounts where I may only have one or two business as usual campaigns alongside of a testing campaign. But if I'm working on an account, say that's spending 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a day, that is where I'll have more business as usual campaigns. Typically, I'm still making sure to take a consolidated approach because I don't want to spread my data too far. I want to maximize the efficiency I can get from my ad dollars. So I would say in a typical like full on scenario, this is probably what you're looking at. And again, it will also vary depending on the performance of these campaigns. So I'm typically not over indexing myself into one style of campaign. If I'm seeing Advantage Plus is working, maybe I've consolidated the account all the way down to that particular campaign, or maybe lookalikes or interests are performing at a time at a little bit of a better degree. So I might lean into those more heavily. So that is where there is some wiggle room within the structure. But overall, having this guideline allows me to be able to come into an account and start building and then taking out all of that guesswork. So I think it's really important to have that process or framework. And it doesn't have to be this exactly, right? Basically, I took what I've learned and the tools that I have at my disposal and created a process that works for myself. So I think it is really important for businesses and media buyers to look internally, to reflect on their learnings, and to build out a process that works for themselves. It's really the process portion that's most efficient, not this particular process, because that then will give you that time back to unlock your ability to spend more time focusing on those areas that will create those material performance outcomes. It is also helpful for being able to delegate tasks and explaining to clients the structure of your ad account. Because I have a structure that's repeatable, I can easily go to other team members to have assistance with creative builds or optimizations for scaling campaigns, and they can go into these accounts and know where everything is because of that structure. Now, the second thing I want to talk about today is vertically scaling over horizontally scaling. Now, vertically scaling, just to give a quick definition, is simply increasing budgets upwards, right? So if we had a $100 budget, we increase it to $200 budget. Whereas horizontally scaling is horizontally scaling out campaigns or ad sets within the account. So taking your dollars, and let's say you have an account where you're spending $1,000 and you'd like to spend $2,000. Well, then if you're horizontally scaling that budget, you'd be taking an additional $1,000 and allocating it to new strategies within the account, whether at the campaign or ad set level. Now, what I've learned over the last couple of years after iOS 14 is that vertically scaling typically works better than horizontally scaling. And alongside the process of creating a repeatable process in my ad account, learning this was a huge unlock to getting back a lot of my time. I recall a time back in 2021 for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, where I had spent probably a good week building in a singular account. We were preparing to spend just over 6 figures per day for the core 5 days over Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And it really took me away from a lot of other things that I needed to focus on. And as we all know, as media buyers, building is an extremely tedious and not so fun process, especially when you have a lot of other pressing tasks at hand. Well, this particular scenario, when the big day came, we had actually turned off almost every campaign that I had built on top of the evergreen that was running by the weekend. And it was the evergreen campaigns and ads that had been running for quite some time that were actually giving us the best performance. And so we leaned into those over the campaigns and ad sets that I had actually built out specifically for this period of time. After that experience, it's obviously not fun wasting time, especially in that time of year. I told myself I was never going to do this again. And so this was one of the big lessons that we learned in this period of time that we took into the following year, specifically for this account. But we also took that learning and applied it to elsewhere. But I have an example here of the overview of what happened in 21 versus what happened in 22, just to highlight how large of a lesson that it was. So we're looking at here on my screen on the left-hand side, the blue bars represent the number of active ad sets in the account in 2021, and the red bar represents the number of active ad sets in the account in 2022. The time spans over Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday. The yellow line represents spend in 21, and the red line represents spend, or excuse me, the green line represents spend in 22. What you'll see is we drastically reduced the number of active ad sets in the account in 2022 over 21, and we're able to maintain the same level of scale, actually a slightly higher level of scale, and the ROAS was far greater. Now, in 2022, the red line is representative of ROAS there. On the right-hand side at 21, the blue line is representative of ROAS in 21. What I will add too is that I'm not claiming that the reduction in ad sets led to this gain of efficiency. The main takeaway here is that we were able to do more with less, and that was powered by vertically scaling, because we were able to lean into what was already working in the account. Predominantly most of these campaigns and ad sets that we had running that we did vertically scale were not actually sales related. They were evergreen pieces of content that were still relevant, but then were absent of that sales messaging. So really relying on the messaging throughout the website to explain what was going on from an offer standpoint, but still piquing people's interest with those evergreen pieces of creative. Here's a table that just really highlights just how different it was. In 21, we had 77 daily active ad sets. In 2022, we had 17. That's obviously a fraction of what was going on in the account in 21. Our daily budget in 21 was $72,300 a day. In 2022, we averaged about 6K more, or just at 6K more, at $78,300 a day. Our ROAS in 21 was 2.97, and our ROAS in 2022 was 4.29. Now, this experience, honestly, I would say this was one of the most pivotal lessons I learned as to how to run an account post iOS 14. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation about consolidation and broad and just oversimplification, but and I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think that this highlighted to me that we can do more with less, and let's lean in and leverage the power of the algorithm in this scenario, and then be able to get that time back to really focus on those out of the ad account optimizations that are going to lead to those material impacts in performance. And another thing is really clear is that the algorithm operates better when there's more data present. That's an obvious. But if you're going to horizontally scale something out, you can expect that there to be a little bit of a lag before you can generate the performance that you're desiring. Whereas I found that with vertically scaling, we could essentially replicate the same level of performance. Now, obviously, to the degree of which you're scaling, you're going to eat into your efficiency. But I found that we can scale up a pretty sizable amount intraday or day over day and hit our scaling goals faster while maintaining efficiency. And it just works better than horizontally scaling. So the moral of the story here is don't overbuild and don't be afraid to vertically scale budgets. It is possible to hit your scale goals quicker while maintaining efficiency with this strategy. And what I would add too is that the general rule of thumb is that 20% increments every day or every other day. But I would actually encourage you to push that envelope a little bit. Double your budgets or maybe increase by 50% and just see how the efficiency reacts, because we're doing this honestly on a daily and a weekly basis, and we're doing it in a very purposeful and controlled manner. But I do think you can push the envelope a little bit more than maybe I would have otherwise thought, especially after learning this particular lesson. So the next lesson is that patience is an optimization. Now, this is probably my favorite lesson because I used to be a tweaker. In the ad account, I was spending hours just frankly staring at ads manager and really making a lot of optimizations that were leading to negligible outcomes. And I think that This is something I would probably say is a lot of media buyers struggle with this. And fortunately, as you get more experience and over time, I do think the patience component is something that really comes into play and helps you become a better buyer, helps you become a better operator. But really, the realization that doing nothing doesn't mean you're actually doing nothing. Being able to spot trends and patterns within accounts can really help you get a better idea on how performance is going, or how a campaign or ad set is going to perform in the future. And I also would even argue that this is more important than manual optimizations, because you can go in and potentially harm your account by making decisions too fast, whether it's with something you just launched and not giving it enough time to breathe and get the runway to get off the ground to find performance, or you have something that's performed really, really well, and you let 3 or 4 really bad days out of a solid 30-day stretch, deter you from keeping that active in the account. So I think overall, it's just really important to give the algorithm enough time to optimize and find its groove. Typically, you'll find that if things are rocky and a campaign or ad set that's been active for a while, things will end up normalizing. The two scenarios that I've kind of touched on where patience, I believe, is very important is new launches and past performers. New launches nowadays, it can take up to 5 days for a campaign or an ad set to find its groove. I think that's especially true anecdotally within Advantage Plus. We've found that Advantage Plus really doesn't start to pop till like day 4 or 5. And it can be really tempting to maybe make some optimizations prior to that because you're not getting that performance that you're desiring. Sometimes it's long as 7 to 10 days. And I just, again, think it's important to allow the algorithm, especially for something new, to get enough runway to get off the ground. This is especially true if you're introducing something new to the account. So let's say you have been predominantly leveraging a landing page or creative style that and you're now kind of introducing something entirely new. It's then even more especially important to allow more time for the algorithm to learn off of that piece of creative or landing page so that it can find that right person. And sometimes that could take weeks. Now, obviously, you have to calculate that into your goals. But I do, again, I think being patient, letting things settle, very important for new launches. The other aspect is past performers. It's highly unrealistic to expect hockey stick growth day over day and week over week. For this reason, it's really important to zoom out and see how a particular strategy is performing on the whole, especially if it's been active for a while. And if you have enough data, you can spot trends and patterns that will help you predict that future performance and make better decisions. Exhibiting that patience can help you prevent from cutting a strategy before it has some of its best days. There's a recent example of this that just happened in an account. This particular ad set is running on ABO at $7,500 a day, and it's been active since May 8th. There's about $420,000 worth of total spend. And we had a really bad week this past week. There were a couple days here. It was 5 straight days actually where we were underneath our benchmarks. And I was very tempted to make an optimization here. Typically, when I start to see, one bad day variance, 2 bad days, I'm raising my eyebrows, 3 bad days, I'm going to assume that a trend is starting. However, I've also tried to push myself on those timelines based off of this theme of patience. And so if I have 3 bad days, I could make an optimization, right? I could maybe adjust the budget, refresh the creative, cut it out entirely. But that fourth option of just being patient and kind of trying to push yourself to just to sit on your hands and allow things to happen. That's what I did in this scenario. After we had 3 bad days, was very tempted, but I said, you know what? Let's just let's go for 4 days. And the same thing happened. The fourth day was bad, and that obviously made that particular week look really bad. But I reminded myself to zoom out. I looked on the lifetime work of this particular ad set, and we were above our goal for lifetime, and we were above our goal in this particular month. And so I decided to wait, and obviously it decided to perk back up. And we're now experiencing three of the best days that this ad set has ever seen at a pretty considerable scale. It's looking like this is probably something we're going to be able to vertically scale up a decent bit here in the next couple of days, especially as we head into the 4th of July period. So to reiterate there, doing nothing doesn't mean you're not doing anything. I didn't do anything here, but that doesn't do that behind the scenes analysis work justice. My optimization was determining that there shouldn't be an optimization based on those past data trends. And that's why you should consider patience to be an optimization. Now, my last point is challenging your bias. Now, this is a lesson that applies to all aspects of life, and it can be very hard to do, but the reward is worth it. Challenging your bias unlocks a whole new level of learning that would otherwise not be possible. Now, there's one particular experience that really pushed me to challenge my bias, and the result of being proven wrong was a lot of success for my clients. So over a year and a half ago, Proxima was just another vendor in my email inbox. And as operators, as media buyers, we get a lot of these emails, and it can be very annoying. It was actually a vendor that made its way into an inbox from a client who was addicted to testing shiny objects, otherwise known as SaaS companies. And I can't say that I was challenging my bias at this moment. I listened to their pitch and decided to test the product, knowing full well I'd probably ditch it in a few weeks. But that never happened. And after a few conversations with the team, I decided to change my outlook. It was the start of the new year in 2021, and I guess the whole personal growth thing was top of mind. Anyways, I decided to test myself and challenge my bias, and I'm very glad that I did. By mid-February that year, Proxima audiences for the account that I was testing them in took over about 90% of our total prospecting budget. The platform ROAS had more than doubled, and our storefront metrics followed suit. Fast forward to present day, and I'm now a partner and a consultant at the company, which is a long ways away from the mindset I had before I changed my bias. So what is Proxima? Proxima is a marketing technology company that specializes in AI-powered audiences. Each audience generated through their machine learning technology is tailored to your brand and built off of first-party purchase data. Their database is complete with over 55 million shopper profiles across 17 product categories. It continues to be powered by thousands of store integrations since 2016, and dozens are being added each day, making the platform more powerful. In short, Proxima is giving back the power of lookalikes to brands. It affords brands the opportunity to access lookalikes built off of seed audiences containing hundreds of thousands, even millions of purchase data points. This is especially impactful in the post-iOS environment when lookalike audiences built off of small seed audiences are no longer as impactful. Now, at this point, I'm happy to do a little shameless plugging. Here's a storefront where we've been able to scale up spend by 156% year over year, increase new orders by 154% year over year, and keep CAC flat, up just 0.08% year over year. And I don't believe we would have been able to achieve these growth figures without the help of Proxima. At one point, we were spending over $300,000 per week on Meta, with Proxima making up over 70% of that total spend. And as you can see on the second chart here on the bottom right, the plot spend at Proxima as a percentage of the total, we peaked at that 70% mark. In this particular scaling period, there was one campaign in particular that averaged over $18,000 per day. And this campaign had been live since last September and has spent over $1 million year to date, really showing the longevity and scale of their audiences. Now, sticking consistent with the vertically scaling theme, we were able to scale spend from $18,000 a day to $40,000 a day in less than 48 hours while maintaining efficiency. This is just one of many examples of where Proxima has taken an account to new heights. And again, I do not believe that we would have been able to achieve this same level of scale without the access to these brand similarity audiences built off of AI from Proxima. Now, that concludes my presentation. I'll open it up. I think I went a little, I guess we got 5 minutes left. But if there's anything from this presentation you'd like for me to expand on, feel free to send me an email at tanner@hermandigital, and be happy to answer any questions with the remaining time that we have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tanner. We had two questions come in. Um, First is kind of let's put ourselves in the mindset of after Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Are there any rules that you follow to scale campaigns back down using the vertical scaling method?
Mhm.
And do you immediately drop down to your ideal budget, or do you scale down kind of like 10 to 20% per day? How does that look for
Yeah.
you?
So there's two instances, right? There's the holiday period and there's the non-holiday period. We'll talk about the holiday period because I think that's where you can get some serious scale. And with July 4th coming up, here's a really practical example that you could potentially work off of. So typically what we do is we'll take year-over-year data from a storefront and observe spend patterns. So typically you'll see spikes for those holiday periods, and then we'll compare that to how we're trending in the current year, seeing if we're up or we're down. And that gives us a good understanding of maybe how hard we can actually push. And then there's obviously the more subjective goals that are put out there by the client or that we have internally. So what we'll do is we'll align those and then determine what we want to start the day with. So for example, for July 4th, or well, let's use Memorial Day. So we found for a storefront, we didn't get a pop until the actual day of Memorial Day. We actually decided to reserve our scaling until that particular, I guess it was a Monday. And so what we ended up doing was we wanted to spend $80,000 at the storefront level. And so then we worked back into that number by looking at our split across the marketing mix and determining where we wanted all channels to be. And that was increasing Facebook from about $30,000 a day to $60,000 a day. So then from there, we decided we wanted to double budget. So then we looked into the account to see what had been trending well as of late and determined how to administer that budget throughout, and then communicated with the other agencies handling the other portions of the marketing mix where we wanted their spend to be. Now, as far as pulling back in that particular scenario, we noticed historically that there's actually a halo effect after the sale period. So we actually kept budgets high, but we reduced them by about 25%. Now, that's going to be completely relative to what you see after the fact. If you find that your sales go back to completely normal, you're going to want to revert all the way back to where you were at. But I think the general rule of thumb is that you actually can play with your budgets a lot more than maybe you otherwise would have thought and maintain efficiency. Obviously, do it with caution, but at this point, I've done this with tens of millions of dollars, and I can confidently say it is definitely a worthwhile exploration.
Love it. And then we have kind of two more questions. In your patients is an optimization slide. Was it clear to you what was causing the bad performance, or what kind of later caused performance to pick back up? Or was that more of just a historical, or I guess based off of historical data?
In that particular example, it was just I had spent almost a $500,000 on that ad set, and it was 7 days. It was 7 days out of, let's call it 45 days that were bad. And it's like, I'm not going to judge that entire body of work based off a fraction of the lifetime that has been spent on it. And because it had been performing so well in our storefront goal or storefront level metrics, so we were looking at customer acquisition costs from a blended perspective as our North Star, we were at a good range at the storefront. So then what I did was I decided to be really patient, maybe more on the riskier side of being patient, to basically feel like it was going to reverse course. I didn't change anything. I didn't change the creative. Nothing changed on the website. There were no offers introduced. It was just purely a showcase of just natural variance when you're advertising on Meta. That's all it really was. And I think that the story there is that things will end up normalizing over time. Now, obviously, don't let it go 10 days plus, but like 5 days to a week, I'm not going to judge how well my year was or how well my month was based off of 5 to 7 days out of 30 or 365.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tanner. If people have questions or would like your deck, they can just email you. Is that correct?
Yeah, feel free to email. I didn't have enough time to really plot out like the whole process of vertically scaling. That might be something that's of interest. But yeah, any questions if they want the deck, yeah, feel free to reach out.